What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here. Back again talking college football, and today we are breaking down Indiana's roster per request. If there's a team you would like to see, please let me know below. If you like this channel or have any feedback, please leave a comment, leave a like, or subscribe. All that helps a ton for a small channel, and I appreciate you. But without further ado, let's get right into Indiana's roster. Coming off the coaching change last year, this team had here we go, to the wrong one. There it is. Coming off the coaching change last year, where they bring in Curt Cignetti, this team comes out of nowhere with an 11-2 record. Their win total was 5.5, so easily they eclipsed that. But they go to the college football playoff, play a semi-close game to Notre Dame, and finish the year with an incredible record. They only had 2 losses all season. They came to Ohio State and Notre Dame, 2 of the best teams in the country that ended up playing for a national championship, which is wild to say. But there is still a little bit of criticism you could throw the way of Indiana. They did not play the most difficult regular season schedule. Their best win was probably against Michigan, maybe Nebraska or Washington, but that kind of tells you the quality of teams they were beating. It's still a Big Ten schedule, and a lot of credit needs to be given to Indiana's Curt Cignetti in his first season with Indiana after coming over from James Madison. And as he'll tell you, he's basically won everywhere he's been. Now we have a lot of continuity. Almost the entire coaching staff is back. Mike Shanahan's back at OC. He previously coordinated the offense for James Madison 3 years prior to Indiana. Finished with the second most efficient offense in college football last year. Second in passing. I mean, this team was 23rd in rushing, awesome offensive line, and their quarterback played the entire season with a torn ACL. And then, same DC comes back, Bryant Haynes, held that position with James Madison. So yes, this is the entire James Madison coaching staff from 2023. But now they move into year 2, and you wonder what this team could possibly accomplish in conference, considering they immediately assimilated to Big Ten play and didn't have a single efficiency metric outside of their 34th ranked pass blocking unit. Just an incredible showing from Indiana, schedule concerns aside. Now we turn to this team moving forward, and what can we expect? Recruiting definitely needs to step up at some point for this Indiana team. They're 46th this year. This is the first full Cignetti recruiting cycle. 2024 and 23 left a lot to be desired, 65th and 68. But as you can see, they're not retaining a lot of those players. That's on purpose. Normally retention, when you see like a 25% in 2023, that's a problem. That was the previous coaching staff. Think there's a reasonable assumption that Cignetti was not all that happy with the players they were bringing in. So instead, they opt to go the transfer portal route, flip the entire roster. They've been 18th, 28th, and 19th in the last 3 classes in the portal. So it's a different way of bringing in talent. And Cignetti's been a talent maximizer regardless of who he can bring in. So it's nice that at least they even have an avenue to doing that. But let's go back to our roster preview. This is a tool we have where it shows the 2 deep, offense and defense. Yellow highlights are transfers. It has the snaps the last 2 seasons, what star recruit the players were. And then there's a value score for each player. So what this takes into account is production on the field and recruiting. The more a player has gotten onto the field, the less the recruiting ranking is taken into consideration, and the more on-field talent and play is considered. To the right, we have the transfer portal, and then to the right of that, we have the departures from the previous year's team. As you can see, Indiana has a fair amount of them, a lot of rotational players, and a lot of their high-end talent actually returns, which is interesting. But one position where we see some turnover is quarterback. We'll get right into the roster preview. They bring in Fernando Mendoza to replace Curtis Rourke. And man, despite playing with the torn ACL, he finished as the 10th most efficient QB in football last year. Now, Mendoza comes over from Cal, 68.7% completion, threw for just over 3,000 yards last year, 7.8 yards per attempt, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 12 big-time throws, 17 turnover-worthy plays. This is probably the biggest concern with Mendoza's game, as he has been a gunslinger, reckless with the ball at times through his 2-year career with Cal. 27 big-time throws, 32 turnover-worthy plays. He needs to bring that number down. He's not the most mobile signal caller. It's kind of functional mobility, 105 yards rushing last year, 1.2 yards per carry. All that led him to the 46th most efficient quarterback season last year. And if you look back to Rourke with Ohio in 2023 before he went to Indiana, he was 43rd most efficient. So it's sort of the same ballpark for transfer you're bringing in. And then obviously Indiana's infrastructure pushed Rourke all the way to the 10th most efficient QB. So Mendoza can probably do something similar. I wouldn't quite expect the same level of play, but he is a high-level transfer coming in, one of the top QBs in the cycle, the transfer cycle coming into the year. The backups are going to be Old Dominion transfer Grant Wilson, and I think it's probably locked down. Tyler Cherry, their lone 2024 four-star, suffered a non-contact injury over the winter, and he's not currently on the roster. Reports indicate that he plans to be back with the team in the future, but obviously can't play this year. So now we add a second transfer, Grant Wilson. He played pretty well in 2023. 22 big time throws, 10 turnover-worthy plays, but the wheels fell off last year with Old Dominion, and he got benched. So expecting him just to be a depth piece for this team, but he has experience. The backfield, they have Kalen Black back, but they lost Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton, their top two rushers. Black is a solid piece to a backfield. He's 5'10", 210 pounds. Last year, he had 46 carries for 251 yards. That was 5.5 yards per carry. But the lead back, we fully expect to be Roman Hemby from Maryland. Comes in 6 feet, 210 pounds, rushed for 607 yards last year. His rushing output has declined year over year the last 3 seasons, but so is Maryland's offense. He's actually an excellent pass catcher. He caught 40 balls last year, and he now has 111 catches over the last 3 years. So those two highlight your backfield. They also bring in UAB transfer Lee Beebe, who rushed for 884 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, 30 catches last year, 5'10", 210 pounds. They like using committees. You can go all the way back to James Madison to see this. All three backs should play some role, but expecting Roman Hemby to be the first back into the offense for this upcoming season. Wide receivers, interesting. There's a lot of turnover here, just not at the top. They lose 7 of their top 9 pass catchers, but their top 2 guys are back, starting with number 1 receiver Elijah Surratt. He's a James Madison transfer, originally from St. Francis, I believe. 53 catches, 957 yards. He's 6'2", 210. Plays mainly on the boundary. 89% of his routes came out there. Posted an elite 7.26 yards per route. So immediately phenomenal target for Mendoza. And then their wide receiver 2, Omar Cooper Jr. is also back. 28 catches, 594 yards. He's 6 feet, 201 pounds. Another perimeter receiver. 90% of his routes came out there. 2.52 yards per route. So an awesome starting place for your receiving room. And then we have a couple players that probably fill the wide receiver 3 void. Maybe it's a rotation. As we saw last year, they were more than perfect. They were perfectly fine using Keyshawn Williams and Cross and these players in a rotation. The first player I'll mention is former Clemson transfer E.J. Williams, who was hurt last year, only played in 4 games, but caught 23 balls in 2023, mostly a perimeter receiver at 6'4", but that's more size than both Surratt and Cooper provide, so he should have a role. Then they brought in 2 transfers, App State transfer Mekhi Jackson and Michigan transfer Tyler Morris. Jackson played on the boundary with App State. He's 6'1", 200 pounds, caught 46 passes for 745 yards. 92% of the time, he was on the perimeter. The only real player who has a ton of experience in the slot is Morris from Michigan, and what an inept offense that was last year. But he's 5'11", 185 pounds, 23 catches, 248 yards. 48% of the time, he was in the slot, so that's worth mentioning. And these guys are going to have to play because Indiana is still a little short on depth. The first thing you'll notice with the offense and kind of the team as a whole is they are pretty good up front, but they are short on depth. We have a team ranking down here, which total is your 2 deep, and then we have 2 deep offense and defense, but the starters come in at 65.2. A lot of other teams, we've been through key reserves. This is incoming transfers or 4 stars, 5 stars that could project to play a role sooner rather than later. Indiana has 0. If you go, I'll pivot you over to Alabama just for a second. This team has nearly 20. So, yeah, I mean, starting-wise, the caliber of players is a little worse than Alabama. No one should be surprised by that. But the real place where Indiana is dinged is their depth, and it's across the board. And that's especially evident at some of the skill position players, but as we pivot over to offensive line and tight end, this is where things start to get a little weaker. At tight end, Indiana lost Zach Horton, the James Madison transfer. So they go out, they add Holden Stas, previously of Notre Dame and Tennessee, 6'4", 248, basically has been a below average player slightly every year at college, had 15 catches last year with Tennessee, as well as 2023 with Tennessee, but not the best blocker. Basically, he's giving you average play at best. And that's kind of what you can expect from Noah Gajewski as well from Wisconsin. He's another transfer that comes in, a former walk-on. But I question the role with him. He's 6'1", 243. He originally began his career as a linebacker with Wisconsin and then switched over to fullback, H-back, has moved into more of a tight end role. But, I mean, I don't expect him to be a large component of the offense. And then the only other player of note is James Bamba, back after one catch last year, 6'3", 253. Mainly a blocking tight end, but this is a weak position for Indiana, the first point of weakness on the offense. Once you get to the O-line, they lost their tackle, Trey Wettig, and center Mike Caddick, but those were two of the top three offensive linemen with the team. However, they have a lot back, starting with left tackle Carter Smith. He's been the starter the last two seasons, only allowed 12 QB pressures last year and 830 snaps. He graded out above average in terms of run blocking. So you have immediately good blindside tackle to begin. Left guard Bray Lynch is also back. Last year was his first year starting, but another good pass blocker. 10th in QB pressures allowed, or 10 QB pressures allowed. Not quite as strong as like a Smith in terms of run blocking, but still well above average. And then they portaled a lot of players. Notre Dame center Pat Coogan comes over. 2-year starter with the Irish, very good as a pass blocker, only 8 pressures and 813 snaps last year. Stout as a run blocker. I think there's maybe even a chance you have an upgrade on Caddick, which would be a surprise. He was phenomenal last year. But center should be in good hands. At right guard, Khalil Benson returns home. Previously, he started 2 seasons with Indiana in 22 and 23. Transfers out to Colorado, where he was part of that wild rotation Dion was running, in and out of the lineup, and he was one of the better players there. Only 10 QB pressures allowed at Colorado last year. Slightly above average run blocker, has experience at both guard slots, even played some right tackle, so he gives you some versatility on the offensive line. If you want to just play your best 5, Benson probably is a factor in that. And lastly, the favorite for right tackles, Ohio State transfer, Zen Michalski, former 4-star, played 4 years with the Buckeyes, but only got 260 snaps. Kind of a black box, but he's more talented recruiting-wise than most of the players on this roster. So the benefit of the doubt should be given. Not many guys can get on the field with Ohio State. It just is what it is. But if he fails for whatever reason, you have the flexibility to maybe move like a Benson outside. And then they have Drew Evans back, a rotational guard for the most part. For that being his role, he got 578 snaps last year, only 4 QB pressures on those snaps. Primarily was left guard, but he played across the O-line, above average run blocker. He has a good chance to start even just right out of the gate. You have phenomenal 6 guys up front, but after that, complete inexperience. Adam Amola, Ajani, 39 snaps, Jack Greer, 34, Austin Liebfried, 49. Those are your top depth pieces on the 2 deep. You just don't have much. They're not elite recruits, very little experience. We'll see what they can do if pressed into action, but I'm positive at least that Indiana has a strong top 6. Defense has a few more weaknesses and a couple more depth questions. On the edge, they lost Linnell Carr, but they have their best pass rusher back and maybe their best defender, Mikhail Kamara, the James Madison transfer. It's between him and D'Angelo Pons. Kamara had 68 QB pressures last year, 68. Just a phenomenal place to start. And they're likely going to have to piece together the second edge position. Former 4-star Michigan State transfer Andrew DePepe, he did not play at all last year, got hurt, but he's still with the team. There's a decent chance we see him. Mario Landino played 140 snaps. Daniel Ndukwe played a few more. Landino will play inside and out, so more depth pieces for this team. But yeah, you're going to piece together this second edge position, probably playing rotation a little bit. Inside, Indiana lost their top 2 defensive tackles, James Carpenter and CJ West. They do return 306 snaps from Tyreek Tucker, former James Madison transfer, and 296 from Texas A&M transfer Marcus Burris. Tucker was better of the 2. Good run defense numbers, 21 QB pressures from the interior alignment. So you're not in a terrible spot there. And then we saw Indiana bring in Dominique Ratcliffe from Texas State and Hosea Wheeler from Western Kentucky. Ratcliffe was better. I think he profiles more as your start if you need one. Wheeler probably more of a depth piece. Ratcliffe was excellent against the run, 17 QB pressures from the interior. But looking at a rotation, most teams use interior rotations at this point. But I think that is the deeper position group on the defensive line. Edge is a little bit thinner, but you have a little bit more star power with Kamara up at the top. Linebacker, Indiana lost Jalen Walker, but they do return James Madison transfer Aiden Fisher. He led the team with 69 tackles. Good up front, he's box linebacker. His biggest problem is coverage. Allowed a 76 completion rate into his coverage. Not great, and we don't know who the second linebacker is going to be. The two best candidates are Elijah Hardy, played 107 snaps, or Isaiah Jones at 207. Both of these players were solid in the small sample. Hardy was better in coverage, but Jones was the lead in run defense. Both are pretty good on their snaps. We'll see who plays. It could just be a rotation as well here. Defensive back. They lost plenty, but fortunately, they returned their stud D'Angelo Pons, the James Madison transfer. 7 PBUs, 3 INTs, only allowed 263 yards all season long. This is a phenomenal place to start for your defensive backfield. And from there, you probably look at Jamari Sharp as your second boundary corner. He played 234 snaps last year, but he was up at 516 the year prior. Started 3 games for Indiana last year. He started the playoff game against Notre Dame, so there is some starting experience with Sharp. Nickel's probably going to be a transfer. I think the favorite is Devon Boykin, who moved in and out of the slot for NC State before coming over to Indiana. He missed all of 2024 with an injury, but he started back in 2023, only allowed 161 yards that year. And if he's not ready for whatever reason, they went out and added a depth piece in Amari Knighton from Northern Illinois. Rylan Gandy comes over from Pittsburgh. Knighton was more of a rotational player, but Gandy did play 766 snaps at an above average level. Maybe they could play one of them at safety. There's a lot of talent in the secondary. It's just not proven within the system. This is the most transfer heavy unit outside of maybe the O-line. At safety, they do have Amari Farrell back after 743 snaps. He was very good in coverage, only allowed 134 yards all season long. But the second safety spot is a little bit up for grabs. I think Lewis Moore is probably the best candidate. He's also returning home. It's funny, a couple guys did this with Indiana. He actually started for this team in 2023, played 740 snaps, decided to leave, saw his production and snap count drop with Ole Miss last year, only 350 snaps. But he was above average back in 2023 when he did play with the Hoosiers. He's a former JUCO guy, so he should slide right in. But you do have the lone 4-star in this class, Byron Baldwin Jr., 2025 freshman 4-star. He joins the team. So you could potentially see him right away. We have him slotted in as a backup safety right away for this team. At kicker, they do return Nicholas Radicic. He started last year, made all 69 of his extra points, only attempted 11 field goals all year. Talk about an efficient offense. This team was so efficient offensively that they rarely kicked field goals, only 11. He went 10 of 11 all year. The only one he missed was from 40 plus. They never even had him attempt a 50 plus yarder. So he trails a little bit in efficiency, but it's not because he didn't play well. It was largely just because of attempts with him. Special teams were awesome for Indiana. It's a well-coached team. We're expecting them to be good again, especially with the returning kicker. As far as the schedule, I'll pivot you over there. It is more difficult for Indiana in this season compared to what we saw last year. Now I'm kind of still a joke. Indiana begins with Old Dominion, little good old revenge game for their backup QB, Grant Wilson. From there, they have Kennesaw State. Then they have an FCS Indiana State before they host Illinois in week 4. They don't leave town at all in September, which is solid because their first road trip is to Iowa, one of their more difficult games, before a bye, followed by home games against Michigan State, UCLA, then at Maryland, at Penn State, close the year, Wisconsin, and Purdue with a bye in between. So up top, more difficult for sure. Last year in the regular season, they had Michigan and Ohio State. This year, they've got road trips to Iowa, road trip to Oregon, road trip to Penn State. 3 extremely difficult games. Tough games at home against Illinois, who returns almost their entire team. Wisconsin's never an easy opponent. They've been down a little bit of late. We'll get into their roster breakdown a little bit later. UCLA apparently going to get Nico Iamaleava, so who knows what UCLA is going to provide. They have new coordinators. Michigan State should be better in year 2 under Jonathan Smith. Purdue even has a new staff under Barry Odom coming over from UNLV. It's just flat out a more difficult schedule than what Indiana had to play last year. So if your expectations, the playoff, your expectations, double-digit wins, I think that's a little rich. But still should be a very good team, should be a bowl team. The starters are particularly strong for Indiana. It's the depth that's a concern. And if they have a injury, something like that, at a key position this time in the fall, that could be catastrophic depending on the position it comes at. So there's a volatile team largely based on their depth, but still a very good team overall. Let me know in the comments who you want to see. If you have any feedback, I would love to hear it. Otherwise, we'll be back again soon with more college football breakdowns. And until then, good luck. We'll see you later.